Well, this is a step forward, similar to a Main Street financing operation, but it's more like the ECB's LTRO operation, whereby it subsidizes banks to lend to SMEs. Clearly, SMEs in Japan need this debt. They need to borrow money to keep alive, and it's helpful in that regard. If you add up all the packages that the Bank of Japan has launched since the virus, it adds to 75 trillion yen, or about $700 billion, which is about 15% of GDP. So it's a strong step. It's not a major surprise. We knew that this was being set up, and there are further proposals coming out for something that's more directly like the Main Street refinancing operation that the Fed is doing.
John, I was fascinated by one of your comments on the ETF buying and the target that it may seek to try and defend on the Japanese stock market. You pointed out 19 to 20,000 points when currently we trade just above that 20,000 point mark. Give us a sense of what is going on the backdrop on buying ETFs.
Well, the Bank of Japan raised the amount that it can buy every year, and it's sort of a soft target. They can exceed it if they want to. They've basically said that they'll buy as much as they need to in order to make sure that stock prices do not fall out of bed. And it seems quite clear that they are intent upon preventing it from falling too far below, say, 19,000 on the Nikkei. They've been accelerating the amount of ETFs that they buy, and last Friday, even they bought, even though the Nikkei did not drop very far. So it's normally they only buy when the Nikkei drops quite a bit, but it does indicate that they are more serious about showing themselves to be a major supporter of the market and to be continuous buyers, not just on significant weakness.
John, I wanted to come in on the ETF story as well. I find it absolutely ludicrous that the ETF market now is utterly dominated by the BOJ, a policy which has kept inflated stock prices higher than they should have been, had the market been allowed to find a mechanism as well. Now the BOJ is sitting on enormous losses from its ETF portfolio. Has there ever been a larger waste of money than keeping a stock market overinflated by buying a vast majority of the ETF market out there?
Well, I don't believe they are losing on their net purchases. I agree that it's suboptimal. Nobody probably wanted to do this. However, what's done is done, and it's also hard to estimate what stock prices would be without the BOJ. I mean, it's not a very expensive stock market. In fact, it's quite inexpensive. And you would have thought if it had fallen much without the BOJ, that investors would have stepped in and purchased it to its fair price, which is basically where it is now. So it is important for the Bank of Japan to be involved in any sort of financial asset that has a signaling mechanism. That's how this whole thing started. It started off as very small purchases for symbolic purposes to keep investors and keep confidence high because people watch the Nikkei. If the Nikkei is falling a lot, that hurts sentiment here. So it's more of a confidence indicator than anything else.
So just get me right here, John, and I don't believe the counterfactual for 1 minute. It's a confidence indicator when you manipulate a market by buying over 80% of the available equity ETFs out there, and you're telling me that's created a fair value in the underlying market. Why couldn't the market find a fair value, given the fact that there are trillions of dollars, trillions of yen out there, desperate to find a home at a decent valuation as well? And my other point is, if the BOJ had spent this money on actually creating economic activity, don't you think that would have been better spent?
Like I said before, it really is hard to know what the market would be right now if the Bank of Japan had not invested. It seems to be, according to PE ratios and price-to-book values, it's lower value than most markets out there. And its earnings growth has been very strong over the years. Obviously, it's been hurt by various downturns, including this major one that we're in now. But yeah, the Bank of Japan does want to did want to prevent maybe at least major downturns in the Nikkei, and I guess they've done that to a large degree with success. But it is an issue that they own so much of the ETF market, and something that people think about, but doesn't make the stock market necessarily overvalued in my mind, just because the Bank of Japan owns a significant portion of it. And clearly central banks all over the world are targeting, if not fixing prices in many different private markets, be it corporate bonds now by the Fed or by the ECB or other such private securities.